All right, well, welcome everyone. This evening, we are excited to host our next workshop in our Investing in Your Farm, Accessing Grants and Loans for Your Business workshop series. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on finding funds to mitigate risk on the farm through exploring crop insurance opportunities and other research-based opportunities through different USDA programs. And we'll hear from our wonderful presenters and our farmers who are on the call tonight. So thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. My name is Jennifer Hashley, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project here at New Entry. And I just wanted to do a quick tech check. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, we'd love to know who's here. So if you want to rename yourself, if your names are not already on the screen, and add your pronouns, and you can add where you're from, your farm name, where you're located, anything you'd like to share with everybody else so we know who's here. And then we just ask that you keep yourself muted if there's any, to eliminate any background noise, and then we'll be able to unmute yourself during the Q&A. And we really encourage you to add questions as we go throughout the chat. We'll be monitoring that. So if there's a question in the moment that makes sense, we can interrupt the speaker and let them know to address something that they might be talking about. This session is being recorded. So hopefully everyone consented to that, and you're welcome to, your video is optional, but when we do the Q&A, we'd love it if people wouldn't mind turning on their video so we can see who we're talking to and make it a more friendly interaction as we do questions and answers. And if you have any tech questions, also just feel free to put that in the chat if you're having any issues. So just a quick little background about New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. We are a beginning farmer training program, and our mission is to improve our local and regional food systems by training the next generation of farmers, and we distribute that food to everyone to make it accessible. We're located here in Beverly, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the state, on ancestral, traditional, contemporary, and unceded lands of the Pawtucket and Massachusetts people. And we have three main program areas: our farmer training programs, our food hub, and some of our national work. So I'll just go briefly through what those are. Our farmer training program involves a lot of different courses that we offer throughout the year, workshops such as these, and an incubator farm program for folks to access land for up to 3 years to grow their businesses. And we're just getting ready to put forward our crop production course for this year. So after this workshop series concludes, if you're interested in getting more hands-on experience on the farm, feel free to look out for that advertisement. And then in the fall, we'll be offering our business planning course again, which is an 8-week, we kind of call it our startup business planning course for farmers to really get their ideas on paper and develop that first year or startup business plan. And you can find a virtual tour of New Entry's incubator farm if that's of interest to you in the future on our YouTube channel, and see the site and what we have to offer and all the equipment that's available here. So that's something you might be interested in. Our food hub is an aggregated just marketing and distribution program. So we buy food from our incubator farmers and graduates and anyone else who is interested in being part of this food hub distribution network. We do food access programming and market-based training and make sure the food gets into a variety of hands, from CSA customers to low-income consumers to from schools and institutions. And then our national programs, we also support other land-based farmer training programs across the country with outreach, technical assistance, educational resources, professional development, networking opportunities, and an annual conference. So we like to make sure that other people across the country are connected to each other doing similar work. So this workshop series tonight came about through farmers being really interested in learning about grant and loan opportunities to help develop their farms as they leave our incubator program and move on to new land. There's a lot of capital and startup costs that need to happen. So we developed this workshop series in response to that, to try to have one centralized place on our resource website where we can kind of talk through all the different programs that are available for helping to start and grow your farm operation over time. So this is the 5th workshop in the series, and we have a couple more coming up in end of March and beginning of April. So I hope you can check those out. And all of these resources from this series will be posted on our website. You can scroll over to the resource tab, and then under our farmer resource library, there's another tab that opens up, and you can scroll down, and there's a section there for accessing grant and loan platform tab. And this is where we're housing all the project materials from this workshop series. So if you missed one of the other workshops, you can go back and view the recording. We're creating resource tip sheets for all the things that the presenters have shared. those will be available for download on this page as well. So you can just click those links and find those resources. And this series is also part of a grant program, which I'll mention in a second. And they also would like us to evaluate how useful this series was and did you learn something? So thank you for launching the poll. We wanted to, if you don't mind, while I'm finishing introducing our speakers, just taking a few minutes to answer some of these questions. And we'll do a little follow-up workshop evaluation as soon as the Zoom session ends. So we really appreciate you taking a few minutes to respond to those so we can demonstrate that this was valuable and that you learned something, hopefully. And again, tonight's session is about crop insurance, and we'll cover a little kind of a wide swath of USDA beginning farmer initiatives and programs across the department. And then we'll hear from SARE, the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program. And we have some great farmers who have used these programs from crop insurance to research grants, and we'll hear their perspective and experience on that. So that's tonight's session. And I wanted to introduce our speakers. So I'll go through the quick introductions and then I will turn it over to our first speaker. So we're going to hear first from Devin Smolak, who has been serving producers across the New England area as a crop insurance agent for the last 4 years and worked on lots of farms in the area, and holds an undergraduate degree in sustainable horticulture and Texas A&M a master's of agribusiness. And so looking forward to learning about the nuances of crop insurance. And then we'll have Rachel Phillips-Barnes from USDA NRCS, who also has a background in plant and soil science from UMass, and then has been working with NRCS for a long time, a couple decades now. So worked in lots of different roles there, and is going to be sharing a lot of different overviews of different USDA programs across the agency. Then we'll hear from Candace Huber from the Northeast Sustainable Ag Research and Education Center. She's the grants coordinator and lives in Vermont and has a background in forestry and horticulture. And she's also been there for a really long time and is super passionate about sustainability and food systems. So excited to have Candace share opportunities with the SARE program. And then we have a few farmers that will be joining us. So Ellie Vaughn is the owner and operator of Phoenix Fruit Farm in Belchertown, Massachusetts. And she began as manager and then purchased the property, like 6 years ago now. So time flies, and she's got a big background in organic farming and a commitment to land management and stewardship practices. And she's going to explain to us how she's taken advantage of the crop insurance program. And then we'll hear from Peter Lowy, who's the farm manager at Codman Community Farm, which is a nonprofit in Lincoln. He's been managing that farm since 2016, and they do a lot of pasture-based livestock production, and he's really grown the operation significantly with an on-farm store, added a market garden, and just recently added a commercial kitchen. And I'm a little bit biased because he is my husband, so you'll be hearing from him. We started our business long before that, and he was the farm manager at Barrel, but he is the sole writer and researcher who's written several SARE grants and a Sustainable Business Innovation Research grant and other grants to continue to try new and interesting things on the farm. So we'll hear from him as well. And then last but not least, I just wanted to thank our funder, the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program, for funding this workshop and making it free and helping us to support the materials that we're developing through this project. And so that is also who really cares that this is important. So we want to hear from you in the polls and the evaluations. So thanks to them for funding this. And without further ado, thank you to our presenters in advance. And I'm going to turn it over to Devin to kick us off.
Well, anyways, my name is Devin Smolak. I've been, serving producers for 4 years here as a private licensed agent. I'm kind of the go-between the insurance company that's appointed by the USDA to implement the program and the farmer. So I'll go on farm every day and talk to producers about the program, see if it's a good fit for them, and kind of help them along to sign up and fill out the paperwork and try and fit this program into their farm. So I guess I was asked to kind of focus on the micro farm program, but for those unfamiliar with the crop insurance program, if you could just move to the next slide, please. We're just going to quickly review what it is. what the microfarm policy is, if you qualify, how much it costs, and what you need to bring to a meeting. And I'll have my information at the end. So if you have any questions about this program or any other programs you may hear about, you can just contact me. Okay, next one, please. So disclaimer, this is all presented to the best of my abilities. It doesn't replace the actual actuarials and policy provisions in the Risk Management Agency site. All right, next one. So, okay, what is the USDA Federal Crop Insurance Program to begin with in general? Next. All right, it was created in 1996 to strengthen economic stability for farmers and producers through market-based risk management tools. The Risk Management Agency manages the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, which provides crop insurance programs and sold through, like I mentioned before, approved insurance providers. We call them AIPs. And the federal subsidies make these programs affordable, which is why when you begin this program, you go to the FSA, the Farm Service Agency, and make sure you are conservation compliant to get that subsidy. Okay, next slide. This is what the subsidy looks like for the microfarm policy. So the Risk Management Agency really wants to get smaller, diversified producers into the crop insurance program. So typically, since microfarm is part of whole farm revenue protection, but as I'll explain it more, typically you need 3 different commodity codes to have access to the 80 and 85% coverage levels. The risk management agencies waive that for microfarm, and it's to make it more affordable and more easy to access the higher coverage levels. This is just a slide showing that crop insurance works, and it's proportionate to the payments that producers pay in. So it's not going to pay every year, but it's going to be there when you need it, and that's the goal of this program. It's very it's not like your car insurance, where if you have small losses, you get indemnified to 100%, but it is something that you have in case, a big storm rolls through, amongst other things. Next, please. All right, what is the microfarm pilot policy? I think this would be a good fit for a lot of newer growers, especially part of the new entry farmers. So next slide, please. Okay, so what is microfarm? It's a risk management safety net for all commodities under one insurance policy. Typically, we've only had individual commodities like sweet corn, peaches, apples, very broad generic crops, and it protects up to $350,000 in allowable revenue. I'm going to go deeper into detail of what that entails. It's your gross revenues, but there are some deductions that will be taken out due to whether they're allowed in this program. The $400,000 for carryover insureds would be if you were already in the whole farm program. It includes farms with specialty organic commodities. Oh, if I can just get that there, thank you. And it was supposed to be less record intensive than whole farm revenue protection for producers, not for agents, which I'll get into that as well. Eligibility, you have to be able to receive federal benefits. You have to be a citizen or a resident. You have to file a Schedule F tax form, or you can do another tax form. We just would have to convert it to a substitute Schedule F. The minimum is 3 years for microfarm. So if you haven't been in business for 3 years yet, I would say, take this into account and maybe keep your records, file your taxes and get with an agent to kind of prep for that if you want this in the future. So it's from 3 to 5 years will be counted in the program as your history. You can't have more than $350,000 in approved revenue, and you can't have 50% of your total revenue from commodities purchased for resale. More than 50%. That's the threshold, because in this program, you are allowed to have value-added items, which is unique. You can't do that with whole farm. and you can't be a vertically integrated entity or have other federal crop insurance policies. This is a difference from, again, whole farm, which is kind of a larger micro farm. All right, next page, please. Definitions, these are some crop insurance words. Don't get too hung up on them. Contemporaneous records, it means that when you're taking records, it's at the time the event occurred. You can't write them down after the fact when you're trying to get records to the insurance company. So like daily receipts, harvest records, things like that. If you had concern about that, you would talk with the agent beforehand and see how, what the risk management agency is looking for. Commodity, any agricultural product established or produced by the farm operation. This doesn't mean timber, forest products, animals for sport, show, or pets. Another definition would be post-production operations. So like wine, maple syrup, things like that would be included in this program where they wouldn't be in the whole farm. It would be maple sap, it would be grapes. That's what they mean by post-production operations. An allowable revenue, this isn't going to mean much to you. This is something where you would meet with an agent and you tell them what you did and what you produced, and we'd be like, nope, yes, no, yes. I guess I'm just going to reiterate, though, that you are allowed to have value-added items in your allowable revenue. I will say off the bat, CSA is not included in allowable revenue. You are allowed to have the program, but since it's a prepaid expense, it wouldn't count towards your allowable revenue. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, next, please. Okay, what does it protect against? What does it do? It basically protects you against any abiotic factors, disease, animals, pests, decline in market price, and like hurricanes, hail, anything that can come after your crop, except for third-party damage, which would be like people vandalizing, walking in, pollution, and trying to think of something else. Usually inability to harvest or find labor. Let's see. So that's something else you would discuss in detail. But it captures all of these things through your Schedule Fs. So although you'll need to, have kind of some sort of record being that you produce the crop, your Schedule Fs will be the ultimate indicator of whether you have a loss in this program or not. All right, next one. How does it work? Here we have 5-year average. Next, please. So there's two things. If you have 5-year history, you can use that history. It will be a simple average. So you would take each year and you would divide it by 5 if you had 5 years. If you had less than 5 years, but at least 3, you can replace those 1 to 2 missing years with the lowest year that you have. So it would behoove you, if you have the history, to really use your own history rather than using those your lowest numbers. Sometimes they're the same thing. It'd be something you'd play around and look at with your agent before you would sign up. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, and so this is what would happen. So say in 2022, you had your allowable revenue was 92,500, and you decided to select the 85% coverage level, which would give you a guarantee of 78,625. The year goes by, you pay your premium, but that's just an aside. But your actual allowable revenue comes into 65,000. Say all your bees got wiped out, hive collapse, okay, and you couldn't sell your honey, you couldn't sell any wax, you couldn't sell bees if you did that. You would be indemnified. The difference between that 2022 allowable revenue guarantee, so that's 78,625, and your actual allowable revenue, which would be 13,625. And then I like to be honest and include the premium in it, so you'd really be getting a net $9,612. So that's just a quick scenario of how it works. I would recommend this program to people who are capable of having large losses. Some people are really diversified. I saw this with a lot of vegetable growers I work with, where they'd have a lot of small losses. I would look at a threshold at least 15% before this program starts paying. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And I want you to be aware of that. Okay, next, please.
Devin, someone just asked, actually, Ellie just asked how the premium is calculated.
Yep, it's based off of rate. So if there was a lot of county and rate. So I have a slide next, if I remember it properly, where Worcester County seems to have a lot of losses. So their rates might be a little higher than, say, Essex County, Mass. And so it will be rate, it will be diversification. So, well, actually for micro, you've got the diversification, but for whole farm, it's usually diversification. It would be how much your revenues are. So what the liability is. And whether you qualify for beginner farmer rancher, veteran farmer rancher, things like that. But I can show that in the next slide a little bit better. So that's how it's calculated. It really is in this program, it's really based off of revenue. And I would say the rate would be the two big differentiators. So this is what I usually will walk through with a grower once we decide that we're able to be part of this program. And if you can see here, it would go from 50 to 85% coverage level. Your revenue would be that 92,500. And so you'd multiply those two to get the guarantee. And that would also be your total coverage, which is the max you'd get paid out in 100% loss. The total premium would be those premiums that you would pay if you didn't have a subsidy. So if you fell out of conservation compliance, we try and avoid those numbers. And then the producer premium would be with the subsidy. But this line down here on the far right is not including that $30 administrative fee. So that's, oh, yeah, and here I have a note here that the county rates do vary. So it is based off of county and state and how many losses that the RMA picks up in the area. That will affect the price. All right, next. This is a timeline I like to use. So usually I will not start micro farms around this time because the deadline's in a week, less than a week. But typically I would reach out to an agent in January, February, after you put everything away from harvest, and just talk and discuss scenarios and see if the program actually works before you put the work in. You'll send the agent, they'll ask for tax forms, sales records. You'll fill out an acreage report. There's a bit of back and forth with this program. There's a lot of mystery with it. It's rather new. So it's only been around for 2 years. So there's going to be a lot of underwriting that the insurance provider is going to probably request. So it's important to be accessible. The sales closing and initial farm operation report will be due March 15th. It's a whole packet, which you'll work with your agent on. Between that time and July 15th, you'd report any potential losses. Take pictures if you're around. Just notify your agent that you think there may be a loss. Before March 15th, I typically put one in just in case in January for all of my whole farm growers. You have the ability to revise your operation report July 15th. So if you change between March 15th and July 15th, which happens, you can make those adjustments. Your premium won't be billed to you until August 15th, so after harvest. And if you fail to pay your premium by March 15th, you'll be put on a termination list. So just pay your premium beforehand. And some AIPs do have a payment plan, but you do have a year basically to pay that premium. Next, please. Again, when you set up that meeting with an agent, and if people contact me, I can show them a link to an agent locator for the area. You'd bring your ID information. So if you have an EIN, bring that. If you have Social Security, any substantial beneficial interests. So if you have multiple people that have at least 10%, you'll need to know their information as well. Bring any decision makers to the meeting and bring questions, tax documents. So 3 to 5 Schedule Fs ideally, but if you file another tax form, we'll need the most recent 3 to 5 years of those, convert them into a substitute Schedule F, a signed 80-1026 on file with the Farm Service Agency, and then any contemporaneous sales records, because they may ask for the past 3 to 5 years for any of those. And just because I like to be cautious, any proof of marketing prices if you're a direct marketer. Next slide, please. Okay. So I still have that question with how much, where the prices for the crop insurance come from. And Ellie, I can talk to you afterwards. There's actuarials that show it. I can send that over to you if you're interested in that. But other than that,
I put a couple other questions in the chat earlier. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I can just read them off. And Ellie was just asking if she about the protection against insects, wildlife, and disease, and are there pest management requirements that have to be documented for that?
Okay, so I haven't had anyone ask for actual records of protection. It's best to go by, your best practices is what you would follow. So pests and diseases, as long as you're properly taking care of the crop to the best of your abilities, you're okay.
So the reason that I asked that is because I'm a farm that does not use any pesticides at all. And I actually recently stopped getting subsidized crop insurance because they do have a thing where if you make a claim, they can say, well, you're not using standard management practices, so that's why you lost your crop. So and the reason that I don't use pesticides is because they have some pretty serious long-term effects on our, whole society. There's resistance issues developing and long-term health risks to ourselves as well as other beings on the planet. So it seems like crop insurance, even if you're an organic farm, they expect you to be using like OMRI approved fungicides and insecticides. So I was just curious if this sort of a plan would not be an appropriate fit for a farm that does not use pesticides.
Yeah, so were you working with the apple crop insurance policy?
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes they're a little stricter. It has a very high loss ratio. I can ask for you since this follows the revenues.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in that.
Do you use any like traps or anything for pests?
No, I sell my fruit exclusively through Pick Your Own, and insect damage, a lot of the pests that I have, the damage is largely cosmetic and it isn't, affecting the quality of the fruit. So I just train my customers like, hey, there's spots on the apples. You can cut off the bad spot. It's still a good apple. You can slice it up and eat it fresh, make sauce, whatever. And people, so I don't get excited about insect pests. I just kind of let them fall into balance.
Okay, so as long as there's still sales on them, it wouldn't be an issue unless that was the cause of why people weren't buying them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I guess sometimes I'll get like, apple scab, which is a fungal disease that, if left unchecked, so my management methods for that are pretty, limited. So, well, I guess I wouldn't be covered for an event like that just because I don't know. That's all. We don't take a lot of time with my question. I was just curious.
No, it's a good question to have. Yeah, I can look into that too for you and get you a more definite answer as well. I'll talk to an adjuster and see what that situation was.
And then my other question was just the um how the premium is calculated. No, and then how do you said something about if you fall out of compliance, it changes your rate. Can you elaborate a little more on that? I didn't quite
Yeah,
understand.
no, it doesn't change your rate.
And what
So
if you're falling out of compliance with again?
yeah, so if you fall out of compliance, you'll be paying the full premium.
But out
So
of compliance with what?
with the FSA's conservation compliance, like it's an 80-10-26 form.
Highly
Like,
erodible land and wetland
yeah,
conservation provision.
Oh, so
thanks.
if you have HEL and you're not following your conservation plan, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay, got it.
yeah. It's like planting on wetlands and stuff. Yeah. Good questions.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Devin, for that informative PowerPoint. And if we can move on, and Ellie, thanks for those great questions too. But we're just going to move on here. I know that Rachel may have to pop off soon thereafter at 7, but that's okay. We'll get her for the time being. But I'm going to share your slides. Rachel, is that correct? Okay.
That's right. Thank you.
No problem. Just give me 1 minute.
And my hard stop at 7 can be a little bit softer if I need to do questions. So
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's see. Now I'm having issues with mine. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if I can do. I'm just going to show the PowerPoint. Okay. Just let me know when you would like them to be advanced.
yeah, perfect. So good evening. My name is Rachel Phillips Barnes, and I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Field Operations here in Mass. That basically means I supervise all of the district conservationists that manage the local field offices. I was also the Massachusetts Beginning Farmer Champion and Coordinator before Jack Loomis took on that role a couple of weeks ago. So the first part of my presentation is going to focus on that role. And if you have any questions along the way, please type them in the chat or wait until the end of the NRCS presentation. And you can raise your hand when I ask for questions at the end. If I'm unable to address all of your questions today, you can always reach out to me or Jack directly. Finally, I've provided the slides and my notes. My notes might not be 100% up to date with the names of the people speaking today, but they're good enough for getting the information. So don't feel like you have to take copious notes because they're available with the slides if those are provided after. Next slide. As Beginning Farmer Coordinator, I work with the USDA agency's Beginning Farmer and Rancher Champions. So it's now Jack for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, Bailey Albert for the Farm Service Agency, Lyndon Nichols for Rural Development, and William Ferris for the Risk Management Agency. These folks point farmers to resources and help them understand USDA processes and help them find the right assistance for their operation. Next slide. I wanted to share a couple of resources with you today, one being the New Farmers website and the other being our newly released Get Started guide. So we have a website dedicated to the new farmers or to new farmers that you can access from the first link on this slide. It's live linked. So if you get the slide, you just click on it and there it goes. From that website, you can access agency information and locate your local service center. You can also sign up for emails by topic when you sign up for the farmers.gov link, also linked in this slide. Next slide. So the new Get Starting Guide, it's a guide to USDA resources designed specifically for historically underserved farmers, which I'm going to define in a moment for you. This guide was just released in September and was the result of a multi-agency effort to advocate for and improve equitable accessibility to programs and services for historically underserved farmers, ranchers, and forestry landowners. As you can see above the, oh yeah, you're back on the slide. Okay, as you can see above, the guide is available in English and 6 other languages: Spanish, Hmong, Chinese, Thai, Korean, and Vietnamese, and each is live linked in the slide, if that's your language of choice. Next slide. Okay. Historically underserved producers are those that meet the definition of beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, veteran farmers, or limited resource farmers. It's important to understand how each agency defines these categories, as they can differ by agency. The above slide shows the table for defining beginning farmers. The guide provides these tables that show how each agency defines those subcategories of historically underserved customers. Historically underserved producers are eligible for certain benefits within programs that are not available to traditional participants. An example of this is the NRCS's Environmental Quality Incentives Program. Through that program, historically underserved farmers are eligible for increased practice payment rates and advanced payments for non-management practices. So that would allow those beginning farmers, basically historically underserved, which covers beginning farmers, limited resource farmers, and socially disadvantaged farmers. So it allows those folks to be advanced funds to purchase materials needed to install their conservation practice prior to the practice installation and certification. Normally, our payment process is you do your practice and then we pay you. But in this instance, you can get a percentage up front to help you purchase your materials. Now, you do have to keep in mind that when an advance payment is issued, it's expected that you buy those materials immediately and promptly install your practice. So you don't hold on to that money for several years and then install, because you have to, it's basically fronting the money for an immediate need. Next slide. So this slide shows the Get Starting Guides table for defining socially disadvantaged farmers by agency. I want to call out and note that women are only included in the socially disadvantaged definition for Farm Service Agency and the Risk Management Agency. So for NRCS, we cover obviously American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander and Hispanic, but women are not included in that. They are treated just like traditional farmers, unless you are a beginning farmer. Next slide, please. So slide 7, finally, I am giving you the Get Starting Guide definition tables for the veteran farmers and limited resource farmers. Those are just there for your reference for later. I won't go too deep into those. Next slide. The Get Starting Guide also summarizes what each agency offers. It covers what to expect when visiting a service center for the first time, and that piece includes a super helpful checklist. It presents tables explaining the programs, and finally has a glossary of terms that will be especially helpful to anyone working with USDA agencies. You probably all know that we kind of speak in our own language, and that glossary of terms is kind of a dictionary to cross-translate. So I hope you find that helpful. Next slide. Conservation assistance. I'm now going to segue into the part of my presentation where I describe it in a little more detail the assistance staff at NRCS specifically can provide. Next slide. The Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS, is a non-regulatory federal agency within the United States Department of Agriculture's Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area. With a mission of helping people help the land, our workforce consists of a diverse group of skilled natural resource planners and specialists. These skills enable us to develop solutions that best match our customers' goals with the needs of their land. Next slide. Guided by our mission, NRCS collaborates with farmers, communities, and other individuals and groups to protect natural resources on private land. Working with these partners and customers, we identify natural resource concerns and develop solutions for restoring and protecting those resources through voluntary conservation. And I have voluntary in bold because we're non-regulatory. Everybody that comes through our door is coming through our door because they want to work with us. Our agency's goal is to help landowners develop conservation plans to address resource concerns and provide technical advice. To help accomplish conservation on the ground, NRCS also offers financial assistance through our conservation programs. I'll briefly describe those programs in a few slides. Next slide. So NRCS assistance falls into two pieces, the technical assistance and the financial assistance. So technical assistance is in the form of advice and conservation planning assistance, whereas the financial assistance comes in the form of programs that we use to implement the conservation practices that were included in the conservation plans provided under our technical assistance. Technical assistance is first come, first serve. So in offices, we often maintain a list of requests, and you might not get a representative from NRCS to come out immediately, but we handle things in the order of when we receive them, as long as they are within our mission. Sometimes we get wacky calls like that's in the attic. Those people don't come first. We try and redirect them to the proper place, but if you want a conservation plan, I recommend you call our office and get on our list. So where financial assistance is first come, first serve, financial assistance is awarded when an application competitively ranks well enough to be selected for funding. So those who would like to compete for financial assistance may apply at any time once you have a conservation plan. And our ranking basically gives more points the more conservation bang for the buck you have. So each program will have a ranking batching date, and those are dates where all eligible ranked applications will compete against each other, and we'll kind of get a list of folks that we have funds and connect those applications with the funds highest ranking receiving their funds first. These ranking batching dates are established each year. Our CSP ranking deadline was December 16th, but we're going to have another one on May 19th. So the ship has not sailed on CSP. And EQIP and AMA, again, we had a ranking batching date of February 17th. We're still actually assessing those applications. So we haven't released our list of who was funded yet. But even if you're not funded in that first round, May 19th, same date as our CSP, will be our next ranking batching date. Next slide. So I wanted to go into, I've thrown some acronyms out there, and I apologize that I didn't maybe define them before I used them, but I'm going to take this time now to do that. So through our agricultural management program, assistance program, it's AMA, producers may construct or improve water management structures or irrigation structures, plant trees for windbreaks, or to improve water quality and mitigate risk through production diversification or resource conservation practices, including soil erosion control, integrated pest management, or transition to organic farming. AMA is available in only 16 states where participation in federal crop insurance program is historically low. Massachusetts is one of those states where AMA is offered. We often see new irrigation through AMA because in EQIP, our environmental quality incentive program, and irrigation history is required to apply for irrigation practices. So that's the most common application for AMA in Massachusetts. Next slide. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, has been the most widely used program in Massachusetts. Through EQIP, NRCS works one-on-one with producers to develop a conservation plan that outlines conservation practices and activities to help solve on-farm resource issues. Producers implement practices and activities in their conservation plan that can lead to cleaner water and air, healthier soils, and better wildlife habitat, all while improving agricultural operations. Next slide. The Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP, may be right for you if you are already taking steps to improve the condition of your land. NRCS works one-on-one with producers to develop a conservation plan that outlines and enhances existing efforts using new conservation practices or conservation activities based on management objectives for their operation. Producers implement the practices and activities in their conservation plan that expands on the benefit of cleaner water and air, healthier soils, and better wildlife habitat, all while improving agricultural operation. For example, if you've been planting a single species cover crop, you may decide to try an enhancement for a multi-species cover crop, or implement a deep-rooted cover crop to break up soil compaction and further improve soil health. CSP offers both payments for implementing these types of activities, and you also get an annual payment for maintaining your good stewardship that you already have on the farm at sign up. Next slide. Conservation plans are developed in coordination with the farmer and the assigned planner. The planner will use resources like maps, soils information, and other items to understand the farm and landscape better. Next slide. These are our 9 steps of conservation planning. It's not always a linear process, but step 1 is determine and document the customer's objectives for the farm. We then inventory resources, identify any resource concerns or opportunities. We analyze the resource data and use that to formulate alternatives. We evaluate those alternatives with the customer. The customer makes decisions, and then they can implement the plan. And at that point where they're implementing the plan, that's when our financial assistance from our programs can come in. Obviously, with any plan, you want to revisit and evaluate the plan and make sure it's executing its designed outcome. If you're planning something to address soil erosion and you're still experiencing soil erosion, that's when we go back to the drawing board and we might dip back into analyzing resource data or identifying the problems and trying to get to the root of that. So it looks linear on the slide, but it really is a circular process with a feedback loop. So next slide. Okay. I've been using the word resource concern a lot, so I wanted to define that. So a resource concern is an expected degradation of a resource below an established threshold or criteria such that the sustainability or intended use is impaired. There are a couple of examples on the screen. We see plant structure and composition and plant pressure in the situation where we have some invasive species going on. And terrestrial habitat for wildlife and invertebrates is another resource concern that we evaluate. So I'd like to look at organic matter depletion, that resource concern under soil quality on our next slide. So if we can go to the next. So organic matter depletion happens when there is management-induced depletion of any or all pools of soil organic matter, resulting in limited soil function and processes that support productivity, biological activity, and water and nutrient cycling. So if you have this resource concern on your operation, what can you do to combat that? Go to the next slide. Okay, so as you can see on the right column here, or yeah, the right column here, there are multiple practices available that may help you to address soil matter soil organic matter depletion on a farm. Cover crop, diverse crop rotations with high residue cover, no-till or strip-till cropping systems, nutrient management, reduced over applying nitrogen, and other practices listed there. Commonly applied practices on the farms of Massachusetts, or sorry, one of the most commonly applied practices on farms in Massachusetts is cover crop. Next slide. So if a customer is applying for assistance through one of our conservation programs, there are a few different scenarios the planner may choose from, each with a unique payment rate. So for cover crop, if you're like in a high tunnel situation on an urban farm, you might use that scenario for 1 acre or less. It's higher per area, understanding that they're not going to have more than 1 acre. I think it's in square footage when you actually look at that particular scenario, but you wouldn't use that on a 40-acre field. Adaptive management is another scenario that's a pretty high level because you're looking at it's a more complicated management system. Basic, organic and non-organic, basic organic, and multiple species. So there's different rates for all of those. They change each year, so I didn't put this year's on there so I can recycle this presentation another time. But if you talk to your local field office, they can help you out with those costs for the different scenarios. Next slide. So I couldn't finish my presentation without giving one more plug for the Get Started guide. It provides a side-by-side program comparison table to help potential participants identify what program may work for their operation. So I talked about these programs tonight, but in case you didn't soak in every word I said and don't feel like going back to my slides, this is a pretty good summary of the different programs and how they might be beneficial to you. As always, conservation planning comes first, and your local NRCS planners are happy to help. Next slide. So please contact your local service center for more information. Next slide. Yeah. And if you have any questions and you're not able to ask them in the session, please reach out. And I guess now is a good time to get questions before I hand it off. Are there any questions?
Do you have any questions from the audience? Well, if you ponder away, well, Rachel, I know that she's going to have to take off here in a minute, but if we have any specific questions for Rachel and we cannot answer them after, when we have our additional Q&A time at the end, then I will email you, Rachel, with those questions, if that's okay. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen okay? And everything looks good? Excellent. Good. Well, thank you, Kimberly. And let me introduce myself again. I'm Candace Huber, and I'm the coordinator for the Farmer Grant and Partnership Grant programs for Northeast SARE. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about all of our programs with the focus on the Farmer Grant programs. Let's see. There we go. All right. So we provide funds to advance sustainable agriculture and food systems in the Northeast. And for farmers in particular, we think of it as allowing you to try to solve a problem or address an issue without risking your own resources. Now, while our programs are aimed at helping farmers, we provide funds to others as well. So as I said, I'm going to be giving you an overview today of all of our programs. And then I'll also point you towards some of our educational resources at the end. So SARE is a federally funded program through USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and we're one of 4 regional programs that offers grants and education to farmers, educators, service providers, researchers, and others to address key issues affecting the sustainability of agriculture. Our program serves these states in green and including the District of Columbia, so all the way from Maine down to West Virginia. In the Northeast, the program is hosted by the University of Vermont, which means that the administration of the funds goes through the institution. Our guiding principles are captured in our current outcome statement as the long-term vision for our region. Northeast agriculture communities honor the holistic connection among land, water, air, and all living beings. Agriculture in the Northeast is accessible, sustainable, and just, addressing historic and current inequities, so all farmers and farm employees can steward resources to ensure sustainability, resilience, economic viability, and a high quality of life. So this is the statement that our administrative council uses when making decisions about our program, and it's used by reviewers to support all the funding decisions for our grants. We have 6 competitive grant programs, and last year we awarded 222 projects for a total of almost $7 million. Since these programs are competitive, we can only fund the top ranking proposals within the amounts allocated for each program. Typically, the success rate is about 50%, but that can vary depending on the number of proposals we get that year. Now, 3 of our grant programs we refer to as our large grant programs. Applying for these grants starts with a pre-proposal, and the pre-proposal is a preliminary concept document that allows SARE reviewers to select which projects to invite to submit full proposals. Pre-proposals are due in early summer for awards starting March 1st of the following year. These proposals, or these projects, all typically run from 1 to 3 years. They also require collaboration with an advisory committee that will provide input on the project design and implementation. First, the Research and Education program. That's for research farmers, educators, and others who work with farmers or ag service providers. And the awards can range from $30,000 to $250,000. The Research and Education Grant Program funds projects that result in gains in farmer knowledge, awareness, skills, and attitudes that are then applied to make measurable on-farm changes leading to greater sustainability. The focus on farmer behavior change is a key requirement of this grant program. This program uses an outcome funding approach that directly connects project activities to measurable goals. So all proposals must include an education program for farmers that seeks to achieve a performance target. And the performance target describes the changes in practices, behaviors, or conditions among the beneficiaries that are expected to result from the proposed project. The next one is the Research for Novel Approaches Grant Program. It's this for researchers, and the awards can range from $30,000 to $200,000. This program funds applied research projects intended to confirm the benefits and/or the feasibility of new practices and approaches that have high potential for adoption by farmers. There needs to be evidence from prior experiments or pilot projects that strongly suggests that the practice or approach is beneficial and feasible, but additional testing, data, and refinement is needed before recommending farmer adoption. So for this program, there is no performance target necessary. The last one here is the Northeast SARE's Professional Development Grant Program, and this is for people who work with farmers, and the awards range from $30,000 to $150,000. This program funds projects that develop the knowledge, awareness, skills, and attitudes of agricultural and other service providers about sustainable agricultural practices to teach, advise, or assist farmers. These service providers then use what they learned through participation in project activities in their work with farmers. Like the Research and Education program, this program also uses the outcome funding approach and does require the performance target. Our other 3 programs are what we consider our small grants, and that's only because the dollar amounts are a lot smaller. These programs do not require pre-proposals, and the projects all typically run for 1 to 2 years. First, the Graduate Student Research Grant Program. This is for graduate students enrolled in an accredited college, university, or veterinary school. The student must be working with a faculty advisor who will be the PI on the grant, and that's for contracting purposes. The student, however, is the one who needs to write the proposal and manage the project. And these awards are up to $15,000. Next, we have the Partnership Grant Program. This is open to anyone who professionally works with farmers, and the project must work in direct partnership with at least one farmer. And those farmers should be involved in both the planning and implementation of the project. These projects should encourage innovative solutions to current challenges related to sustainable production, marketing, and/or farmer and community well-being. It can be conducting research, offering education and training programs, developing machines and tools, exploring new farm management and community development approaches, or any other work that would strengthen our Northeast agricultural community. And these awards are capped at $30,000. And last but not least, we have our Farmer Grant Program. I'm going to talk a little more about this with details about how to apply, but in a nutshell, the program is for farmers to explore new ideas and techniques, or it could be to apply known ideas in new ways or with new communities. And applicants are required to have a technical advisor who would provide a needed expertise on the project. And these projects are capped at $30,000. So before I get into the specifics of the farmer grants, I wanted to provide some details that apply to all of our grant programs. The project must take place in and benefit agriculture in the Northeast region. The topic can be anything that addresses opportunities to improve the sustainability of farms. And for each proposal, but not the pre-proposals, a detailed budget is required. So you really have to think through what you will need to do the work. The awards are given on a reimbursement basis, which means you have to invoice us for your project expenses, and then UVM will send you the funds. And you can only submit one proposal per program per year. So if you have multiple ideas, you should choose with just one. But if you qualify, you can apply to two or more different programs per year. And the calls for proposals for each program can be found on our website, and they have detailed instructions on how to apply. So it's really important to read them carefully. Now, currently, 5 out of 7 of our programs are paused. 5 out of 6 of our competitive programs are paused for 2023 so that we can increase our capacity to work on our Northeast SARE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan. So we're pausing all of our competitive grant programs except for the farmer grants. We're working on different aspects of our program to make sure our resources can be accessible to all agricultural communities. So the farmer grants will again be offered this fall, but all the other grant programs will not open again until next spring. And then if you are awarded a grant, along with managing the project leader is responsible for managing the award. And this includes the contracting. Since UVM is the host institution, there'll be a contract between you or your organization and the University of Vermont. You'll need to submit the periodic invoices to get reimbursed for your expenses. You'll need to share the results of your project through outreach. You'll need to provide us with annual progress reports and a final report. And lastly, work with us to process any project changes along the way, such as budget reallocations or timeline extensions. Things most certainly don't always go as planned, so there is flexibility. And always keep in mind your successes and challenges are learning opportunities for you and other farmers. So now I'm going to walk you a little more through applying for a farmer grant. We'll go over who can apply and on what topics, what you need to develop a good proposal, and how to submit a proposal. The main goal of this program is to fund research that will help you and other farmers in the region. So in order to be eligible, you must qualify as a farmer in the Northeast region, and I'll explain that on the next slide. You can be a farm owner or an employee of a farm, and the farm must have the capacity to manage a grant. As I said before, the funds are provided on a reimbursement basis, so the farm needs to be able to pay for the expenses up front, and then you submit your invoice, and it can take up to 30 days to get payment. So this grant program accepts all types and scales, and by that I mean Northeast SARE accepts all types and scales of farms. You could be farming on a large scale or a small scale with organic or conventional practices, urban or rural, full or part-time, etc. But the farm that you own or work on must be a commercial operation with an established farm income of at least $1,000 per year. We use the current USDA definition, which is any place from which $1,000 or more of agricultural products were produced and sold, or normally would have been sold during the census year. Normally would have been sold is an important phrase because the USDA recognizes that some farms experience low sales in particular years due to bad weather, disease, changes in marketing strategy, or other factors. Now, some enterprises, such as indigenous agriculture or urban agriculture that produces products for community food systems, may be eligible to apply where the production activity has an annual value of at least $1,000, but the products are not actually sold due to cultural factors. So reviewers will evaluate the extent to which the proposed project contributes to the Northeast SARE's outcome statement. And on our website, we have a document that explains this further and provides examples of what qualifies and what does not. And if you have any questions about whether you're eligible, feel free to contact me directly. In my presentation, I've got links to our website throughout the presentation, but Kimberly will also be posting those so that you can access them later easily. As far as topics go, the only criteria is that it enhances agriculture in the Northeast by adding opportunities to improve the sustainability of farms. And that's based on these themes: environmental health, profitability, conservation of natural resources, enhanced farm labor, and improved quality of life. Some examples of projects that we've had over the last couple of years: we've had aquaculture, beekeeping or pollination, business management, like developing a model for a purchasing cooperative, any sort of crop or livestock production, such as variety trials, cultivation methods, nutrient manage, or pest and disease control. You can work with certain commodities, but your project doesn't have to be commodity specific. Your project can be developing prototypes. It's common for farmers to design things. Farmers are always inventing solutions when confronting with challenges, so they often can come up with great ideas. Also, demonstration or education projects are eligible as long as you develop some new educational resource or adapt existing resources to apply them to a new audience of farmers. Now, if you want more specific examples, you could go to our projects database on our website and see what we funded there. But whatever topic you choose, keep in mind that the project results must benefit the wider agricultural community and not just your farm. It's also important to note that any work that we are funding will be made available to the public through SARE's project database. So, for instance, if you're asking for funds to develop a product, the prototype plans and material lists will be a part of the project outreach and reporting. Now, I think I mentioned before that the farmer grants do require a technical advisor. The role of the advisor is to provide support to you as the grant applicant, and that support is such as helping you design your project, reviewing your proposal, assisting with outreach, or troubleshooting issues that come up during your project. The technical advisor could be an extension educator or university researcher, a private consultant, veterinarian, NRCS or other government staff, nonprofit or for-profit ag service providers, or any other technical expert, including another farmer. Really, anybody who has experience and knowledge in your topic area. Now, on our website, you can find a guide for technical advisors, and it describes their role. And it's a good idea if you're looking for a technical advisor to share that with them so that they can understand their responsibility. We also have some videos of farmers and their technical advisors describing how they work together. Now, finding a technical advisor can sometimes be challenging, so we do advise you to make this one of the first things you do for farmer grants. The next step is to design your experiment. This is something your technical advisor could help with. It's also would help to really read the call for proposals, so you know all the information that you'll need to provide, all the questions you'll need to answer. You want to identify your objectives and then think about the best way to achieve them or answer your questions. You'll also want to identify all the costs involved. For help developing a research project, you could check out the SARE publication on our website called How to Conduct Research on Your Farm. That's a great place to start. So you will need to put together a detailed budget and justification of the expenses for your project. And on our website is a spreadsheet template for you to complete where you'll identify each expense, why you need it, and the cost in terms of unit, quantity, and price. So some of the types of expenses that SARE does cover include certainly your time working on the project or hired labor, all your supplies, travel. You might need to travel as part of the study or for outreach to present your results, printing and publications, maybe a flyer for a field day or a fact sheet or a guide with your study results, and any other direct costs such as equipment rentals, soil tests, consultant fees, those types of things. But everything you request for funding, or you request funding for, must be specific to your SARE project, so specific to the actual work you're proposing to do. Some of the things SARE doesn't cover include startup costs, structures or major renovations, vehicles, any equipment or operating expenses that would be part of your normal farm operation, and any expenses incurred outside of the contract period. Now, the proposal itself is a series of questions. We highly recommend that you prepare your answers to the questions before entering them into the online system. The questions are all listed here, but I'm not going to go over them individually. They are also will be in the call for proposals with very detailed instructions and an explanation of the types of things we're looking for. And there are also the required attachments that you need to submit. This includes that budget spreadsheet and also a letter of commitment from your technical advisor. And if you're not the farm owner, you would need to upload a grant commitment form from the person who owns the farm. And you can also include any supporting materials, such as plot designs, prototype sketches, sample surveys, that sort of thing. So to summarize the tips for submitting a strong proposal, make sure you're eligible and that your project is seeking to provide new information to farmers in the Northeast that will enhance sustainable agriculture. Start early. Some people put in up to 40 hours to develop their proposals, and line up your technical advisor well in advance. Prepare your proposal offline. Follow the call for proposals and review your answers before entering them into the system. It also could help to have your technical advisor or someone else review the proposal. Write with reviewers in mind, meaning keep your writing clear and straightforward, and don't assume that they know in-depth details about your topic. So avoid jargon. And develop a realistic budget. So request funds only for the allowable expenses. And be sure to have your attachments ready to go ahead of time so there's no last minute scrambling. The timeline for the next round of farmer grants, which would be 2024 farmer grants, is September 1st. The call for proposals will be ready and available on our website. By October 1st, the online submission system will be open, and the link for that will be available in the call for proposals. The deadline for the farmer grant proposals is 5 p.m. on November 14th. So be sure to leave yourself extra time in case you have some glitches or technical difficulties, because proposals will not be accepted after 5 p.m. and that includes all the attachments. Then the proposals move forward through the review process, and results are announced in late February. And for awarded projects, we'll be issuing contracts in March. And if your proposal is not accepted for a grant, we will send you comments from the reviewers sometime in April so that you can understand how you could improve your proposal if you'd like to resubmit next year, maybe. Because we appreciate the effort put into submitting a proposal, so we want to provide whatever feedback we can. So you'll find everything you need on our website. In September, we'll post the 2024 call for proposals, the budget spreadsheet template, and also the grant commitment form if you need it. And in the meantime, the past call for proposals is posted, so you can use that as a sample. On the same webpage, you'll also find all other grant resources I've mentioned today. And lastly, I just want to mention the educational resources you can find at SARE. If you're curious about a certain topic or trying to start something on your farm, you can go to our project database and search using keywords, location, type of project, etc., to find reports that might have valuable information for you. You can also look for books, guides, videos, and other information projects that resulted other information products that resulted from projects, as well as some publications produced by SARE Outreach, such as that, How to Conduct Research on Your Farm. And then to hear about our deadlines and other information about our programs, be sure to sign up for our mailing list. You can go to the website and sign up, or email or call our office. We do offer webinars as the grant deadlines get closer. We often have webinars for that specific grant program to go over how to apply, so you would be notified about events like that. You could also follow us on Facebook or Instagram to get information. And SARE, we do have state coordinators for SARE in each state. And in Massachusetts, the state coordinator is Clem Clay out of the University of Massachusetts. And here's his contact information. If you're in one of the other states in the Northeast, you can go to our website to find the state coordinator for your state. And Clem's information is there too as well, so you can always find that. The state coordinators can provide information about SARE grant programs, project results, and other sustainable agriculture resources and opportunities. And then lastly, you can feel free to contact me at any time with any questions. Here's my information, and you can also find it on our website and in the call for proposals. So that's my presentation, and I don't know if anybody had any questions.
Well, Candace, I have several questions for you, but I think I'm going to contact you separately because I don't want to take up extra time. I know we're a little behind right now, but I'm a grad student and farmer, and I'm definitely going to be applying for the farmers grant this fall for a research project that I'm already working on. But again, I think it's probably best if I just email you. So I'm really excited to hear. I thought that there weren't any SARE grants until next year, so I'm excited to hear the farmer grant is on for this fall. That's awesome.
Yeah, yep. Send me an email or give me a call and we'll talk it through.
Great, thank you so much.
Well, great. Any other questions for Candace before we ask Ellie to give her lovely insights into these grants that have been talked about?
Well, I'm more, I think, going to be talking about my experience with crop insurance.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. You had mentioned that before. Grants and crop insurance. Yes.
So I apologize. My voice is a little, I have a cold. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'll try to keep my volume up where I can be heard. So I'm Ellie Vaughn. I'm the owner of Phoenix Fruit Farm. I started my business in 2017 doing wholesale to Big Y as well as farmers markets, and I started a store in 2019. In addition to those, I was doing pick your own as well, so I had several different enterprises going on. And as of the end of 2021, I started developing some like back and neck issues. I was having like severe muscle spasms that basically disabled me for an entire season. And so I had to really scale things back on my farm and reinvent my whole system of management to where it's, more sustainable for, I'm better now, but I'm still doing PT and I want to farm for the rest of my life. So I'm having to kind of change the way that I farm and the scale at which I'm farming. So now I'm only doing pick your own. and I'm back in grad school studying for an advanced degree in plant and soil science. I stopped using pesticides mainly because I physically was unable to sit on the tractor and I could not do any tractor work for the season, including spraying. But I had also been really hating pesticides for a long time, and I've been using a lot of conventional synthetics because I'm in apple farming, and as we know, there's unique challenges in this region in terms of pest and fungal disease issues that make it really challenging to do any semblance of organic. And even the organic growers do use a fair amount of OMRI approved fungicides like copper and sulfur to control diseases on their orchards. So there really isn't a lot of alternative management set in place for pesticide-free apple production. So that's part of what I'm going back to school for, is finding pesticide-free solutions in apple production. So I had crop insurance right from the start. I bought my farm from Atkins, who are I'm in Belchertown, Mass, which is like Western Mass. So I'm like right next door to Amherst, where there's UMass. And so I bought this farm from my employers at the time, who I was managing the farm for, and inherited a system of wholesaling the fruit and paying for this crop insurance. And I found that there's several levels of coverage, and no matter who you buy the insurance from, it's all the same. It's all like a federally subsidized system, so the prices are, no matter who you go to, are all the same. The premiums were based on my actuals of production, and I found that when I had a claim, what they do is they cover, I was insured for the 60% premium because I couldn't afford anything more than that. I found that I have a loss claim every maybe 3 or 4 years. It wasn't like I was having losses every single year. And so the premium was like a couple few thousand. And when I did have a claim, it would cover 60% of what my sales volume averaged out over the last 3 years or whatever. And then it would base what it reimbursed me on like the market prices of wholesale apples in terms of like the global industry. So like what the Washington growers are. So it was like $10 a bushel, 60% of what I would normally have. And I'm a Northeastern grower selling to a fairly like niche market where I'm getting at least $30 a bushel, if not twice that, for my pick your own or more. So the when I got a payout, it would cover maybe like 30% of what I would normally make in a season. So it was a good payout for me back when I was a larger wholesale operation, when I did have a loss, but it wasn't something that even came close to replacing what I would have made if I'd had a crop. And I think that Northeastern apple growers are particularly not really benefiting very well from the subsidized crop insurance system because we don't have the economies of scale that Washington growers have, where they're growing on 3,000 acres and it's all high density and they've got all the newest equipment and everything's mechanized, and the $10 a bushel is closer to the prices that they're expecting because they're in that more higher sales volume category, whereas Northeastern growers typically have much smaller farms. The topography is rocky and sloped and uneven, and we don't really have just like mechanized monocultural fields as much as these commodity growers in Washington do. So if you're not regularly having crop losses, then the premium can often be a difficult thing to support. And then when I went to just doing pick your own only and becoming a much smaller scale grower, there were a couple of additional challenges with the insurance where, firstly, now I'm making everything is entirely direct market. So I'm getting like $80 or $100 per bushel. And then my insurance is saying, well, we're going to pay you for 60% of what you'd make, and it's $10 a bushel. Now I'm getting, 10% of what I would have made, when I had a loss year. And then to top that off, there are, we talked a little earlier about how if you're not using standard management practices, the adjuster can say, well, you lost your crop because you weren't protecting it with pesticides. So it started to feel like the insurance was not as good of a fit for me. as I came into like alternative practices on a much smaller scale than I had been operating at. So I'm actually in between policies right now. And I'm kind of kicking myself because this was the one year I should have paid for a policy because I have a total loss on my peach crop from the weather that we've had this winter. So I'm like, I should have paid for one more year and then, and then like cut it off. But you never know. Like you could have 5 years in a row where you're just paying out thousands of dollars for nothing. And then you have one crop loss and it's like, that pays back, you know, what you've been paying for several years and then gives you a little bit, but it's really not enough to, and it doesn't even come close in my experience to being enough to actually like float a farmer through a bad year. So I don't want to be super, you know, I don't want to take a ton of time up because I know we're kind of behind schedule and there's a couple more speakers, but that was the main thing that I wanted to say. It's like, I'm not saying don't have the insurance, but don't expect it to compensate for like a good season, have other safety nets as well. And that being said, you know, this new micro farm model might be a better fit. You know, I'm not as experienced with diversified vegetable growing and how that insurance could apply there, but I imagine that unless you're regularly having losses, you know, the model we looked at earlier with the farm that makes $92,000 is paying a $4,000 premium, and in a loss year, they get, you know, like a kickback to where they're making 80% of what they could have made. If that is only happening like every 5 years, then the amount that they paid in their premium is sort of negating the purpose. But if they're having a loss like that every year, then maybe it's not. So it can be a very complicated issue, especially for smaller diversified farmers, I think. So anyway, I'll open the floor for questions, I guess.
Thanks, Ellie. So does our audience have any questions? And if not, we can proceed to Pete, and then maybe you can ruminate over what you've been hearing and learning.
All set.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'm Pete Lowy. I manage Codman Community Farms in Lincoln, Massachusetts. And Codman Farm is a nonprofit farm. We farm about 150 acres, a lot of livestock on pasture, cattle and pigs and chickens and turkeys. And we also have a new market garden and an on-site farm store where we market most of our products. So I'm here to talk about SARE and SARE farmer grants. And I've been applying for SARE farmer grants since I started farming over about 20 years ago, when I realized that I could get money to try things that I was thinking of doing. And so it was a great way for me, who's always trying to think of new and different ways of farming and experimenting. And it's a way to give your ideas a shot and to think more clearly about them and to get funding to do it. And so it's an amazing program. I think Jen told me about it way back when we started our livestock farm. And so I think I've gotten 4 or 5 grants farmer grants over the years. And it has really helped and changed. The grants that I've done have actually changed the way I farm in a lot of ways. So you know, Candace talked about the program itself and the process. I guess I can just talk about my personal experience in that, you know, if you're someone that is either starting out or an existing established farm, and you are struggling with the way you're farming, or you have ideas as to how you can change what you're doing and try and improve things, first of all, the SARE database is an amazing place to start. I don't know if Candace, you talked about that, but you can access the whole database of every project that's ever been done and see their report, and then reach out and contact that grower to get their firsthand experience if you're really that interested in the project. But what's really cool about it is that you can, if you have an idea, you can see if it's a new idea or not a new idea, and it can really help you flesh out your concept. And if you realize by doing that research that no one has ever thought of the thing that you're trying to do, well, then you know you have a unique idea that it's worth pursuing. At least that's the way I look at it. And so in each of the 4 projects, I was just thinking about beforehand the projects that I've done. Initially, I was very timid and didn't think that I would get any of the grants that I might write. I wrote one. I was working for a more conventional vegetable farm that wasn't doing enough, in my mind, cover cropping. And so I wrote a cover cropping protocol with sweet corn, conventional sweet corn. And I said to the owner, well, will you adopt this practice if I can get the money and pay for the seed and it'll be basically free to the farm? And because otherwise he would have said no. And he's like, well, yeah, try. Very doubtful that I would get the grant. And so I did my research and spelled out everything I wanted to do. And lo and behold, I got that grant. And it was, maybe for $4,000 or $5,000, but it paid for the seed, it paid for the tillage, it paid for my time. And it basically got the farm to cover crop some sweet corn that they hadn't done before. And it was a great way for this conventional farmer to see that, hey, we can try new practice and it won't cost the farm anything. So that was the first thing I ever done. And then from then on, as Jen and I started raising pasture-based livestock, it was at that point a new enterprise. And so we were mowing ahead. For instance, we were growing meat chickens on pasture, and we were trying to figure out ways to reduce our labor instead of having to mow the grass when it got too tall. And so we decided to run sheep ahead of the chickens instead of mowing. And it was a multi-species grazing system. And so I wrote that grant, and lo and behold, I got that. And it was another way for us to measure a new practice. And I think that what's great about SARE and the process is that it really forces you to, one, get an advisor who will help you with the process. But 2, and more importantly, is that, if you're, as a farmer, trying a new practice and you get busy during the season, it's very easy to kind of not follow through with your idea. And what's great about the SARE grant is when you sign that contract and you're going to get reimbursed for the project expenses, it makes you that much more invested in the project itself. And so what it does is it really makes you much more organized and committed to the idea and the research. And so I have experienced that all the grants that I've written, it has made me a better grower because it's made me stick to the well thought out and well laid out plans that I made at the beginning of the season or prior to the season to really follow through. And I've really appreciated that kind of feeling like you have someone watching over you to make you do a better job than you might normally do if you didn't have that kind of overhanging pressure. And then it makes you think through the process, it makes you think through your results. And it's kind of a powerful process. So the last grant I wrote while I've been here at Codman, and that was about 3 or 4 years ago, as we were trying to develop improved feeder systems for our meat chickens. And I did a lot of research and realized that there was very little research out there on growing meat chickens on pasture and how much space they actually need, feeder space they need. And so we were in conjunction at the same time, me and a local, sort of a local inventor of a friend of mine, we wrote a grant to SBIR, which is a USDA Small Business Innovation and Research grant. It's a higher level, larger program, much more involved. And those grants, we got a $100,000 grant, and that was to invent a new chicken mobile feeding system. And so for that system, we needed to know how much feeder lip space each chicken needed. And so while we got that grant, we got the SARE grant to help measure how much actually space this new feeder could feed. So it was kind of a fun dual project that summer where we were building an actual feed wagon from scratch using augers and feeders and kind of building our own system. But at the same time, we were measuring, doing very precise measuring of how much feed we were dispensing to birds on pasture, meat birds and laying hens, and trying to figure out, well, what is the reality? How will it affect the rate of lay? How will it affect their meat birds' growth over the time that they're on pasture and in the brooder, the whole process. And so you know, again, I think having those opportunities, and at that time, I think the grant limit was 15,000 for farmer grants, and I just realized that it's up to 30, which makes me rethink, like, oh, maybe I can try again for a larger grant. But you know, I think if you're interested in doing it, I would do it. There's a lot of great resources. You know, you can reach out to SARE themselves. The resources, the guidebooks on guiding you through the process and how to write the grant if you've never done it before. It's really not that intimidating, and it really can help you be a better grower and get you to build something or create something that you normally wouldn't have the money to do or wouldn't try. And I think it's an amazing resource for all the growers that are out there. It has really helped me become a better farmer, and has helped me, you know, become more confident in my writing skills and in my professionalism as a grower, as I've been doing this now for 20 years. It was one of the first things that I did, and it's still something that I look to as a resource. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, so I see a thing on the chat. All the research findings are available on the SARE website. You could probably type in my name and search for that. You know, I've farmed under a couple different farm names, but all the research reports should be out there.
And you mentioned as well, or you didn't mention the part about the distributing the results to other growers. I know that that was a part of SARE's requirement as well. If you want to talk about how you did that.
Yeah, so every grant, you have to have a way to disseminate your results, try and get the information out there, because the point of it isn't just, you know, one thing we should make clear is that it doesn't always mean that you have to invent something or come up with an idea that no one has ever come up with in the history of the world of farming. It could be something that's entirely new to you as a grower and maybe is not really well adopted in your area. And so SARE is really open to getting growers to try new things themselves. And so if it's innovative for you, and it might be innovative for the growers in your region, then there's a chance that you could get approved also. But part of the process along that same line is that you want to get that information out there. And so part of your grant application is how are you going to disseminate that information? And often, Jen and I, you know, in the past spoke at a lot of conferences. So it would be, you know, at, you know, regional conferences, whatever your topic is, veggie conference or livestock conference, you would reach out to the conference coordinators and say, hey, I have the SARE grant. I really want to talk about my research and my results. And often they always want new speakers to talk about stuff. And so that's a great way to do it. We've done farm tours, invited local, for us, you know, the Craft Regional Alliance of Farmers in this area. You try and get on that tour group, try and get growers out here. And then it's really fun, and you get to share the things that you've done and maybe learn from some other growers as well. So, and now online, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of other ways that you can share the things that you've done. I don't know if there's Zoom ways to do that, but generally going to conferences and then doing farm tours has been the best way to kind of get that information out there. Jen, if I missed something, you can let me know.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Peter. And thanks all to everyone else. Do we have any other last questions from our audience or anything that needs to be clarified? Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. And if anyone has any additional questions that they think of after they've popped off the Zoom, feel free. You can email me or Jennifer at New Entry, but I'll type in my name here, and I'm the Associate Director with Jennifer, who is the Director of New Entry. The other thing I'm just going to ask you kindly, you will be given a survey as you leave our Zoom here. And if you would please just take the time to fill that out, that would be wonderful. Yes. But any questions, let me know. And in the future that you can think about, if not, we have our next, actually, March 20th is our next workshop. And that'll be still tied to thinking about grants on the farm. So take a peek at that on our website. And if you are not signed up for it, please do. And then we have our last workshop in April 3rd, which is tied to SNAP EBT and access and pertaining to farmers and obtaining the ability to engage in the SNAP EBT program and take that as a vendor. All right, well, thanks so much. Thanks all to our folks who participated today and also those that came in. We appreciate you all.